So I didn't notice you weren't there.
Ashley's going to be late, isn't he?
Yeah. So, welcome to the latest meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee. This meeting is being live streamed on the Council YouTube channel. The recording of the meeting will remain online for 4 years, and if you are present in the chamber, you are consenting to appearing in the recording and broadcast, which may also be used for training purposes. Anyone else recording or filming within the room must not obstruct the view of councillors, officers, the public and press, and that flash photography must not be used unless it's been agreed beforehand. We haven't received apologies. Ashley is going to be a bit late. Okay. There have been no declarations of interest, so on to the minutes. Are members happy to approve as the correct record the minutes of the meeting held on Monday, the 11th of September?
Yeah.
No, you haven't.
I don't think there's any dissent, so we'll go for yes.
Yep, okay. Okay, lovely. Sorry, I've lost my place.
No public question.
No public questions. There's been no petitions or deputations. So on to agenda item 6. On the first substantive agenda item, this is a verbal update from external auditors on the process for issuing a disclaimed audit report. I will pass over to Hassan. Sorry, Hassan.
Welcome
To provide the update. Thank you, Hassan.
Yeah, just by way of introduction, name's Hassan Rohiman, a partner at EY, and we're responsible for the Council's external audit for the financial year commencing 23-24 and onwards. We're currently in the process of undertaking work in relation to the 23-24 financial statements. The statements were prepared in early September. As members may be aware, the government has introduced backstop dates in terms of looking for the recovery of the auditor market across the public sector. We anticipate that once our work is completed, that we'll be issuing a disclaimer opinion on the 23-24 accounts. We also have a responsibility under the Code of Audit Practice to look at the arrangements that authorities have in place under 3 criteria specified by the National Audit Office: their financial sustainability, governance, improving economy efficiency and effectiveness. Our work in those areas are currently in progress. However, we do expect to be reporting significant weaknesses in VFM arrangements. We also, in issuing the disclaimer opinion, we also will be looking to see whether the annual governance statement, so this is the annual governance statement for 23-24, whether it's consistent with our knowledge. We've highlighted to officers that there are areas where the annual governance statement, as it's currently written, wouldn't be consistent with our knowledge of the authority. So I understand that the AGS, there's work underway to update the AGS in certain areas. So that's an outline in terms of where we are in relation to the 23-24 audit. We did also were concerned at certain areas in relation to financial reporting, financial management, and as members may be aware, we have issued statutory recommendations, although I understand that those recommendations are going to be considered at a meeting of the Council on the 25th of November. So I'm not proposing to not proposing to kind of discuss that in any detail at this particular meeting, but happy to take any questions which members may have in relation to what I've outlined where we are on the 23-24 audit.
Thank you, Hassan. Are there any questions for Hassan from the external audit update?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You said, excuse my voice, everyone, I am croaky. Some people might be happy with that, but anyway. You said that the annual governance statement is not up to the standard you would expect, or words to that effect. Could you clarify that? And so if it's not up to standard, what does the council have to do to achieve that? Thank you.
Sure, yeah, happy to clarify. I said it wasn't consistent with our knowledge. So there's a responsibility for the council when preparing their annual governance statement to looking at the systems of internal control and identifying within the annual governance statement whether there are any significant weaknesses where actions may need to be taken in order to address them in the future. There are issues in relation to financial reporting, so the council's financial statements haven't been prepared on a timely basis. So that's an issue which we would expect to be identified within the annual governance statement, together with actions that the council will be taking to address that particular point. I think there are also some issues in relation to some aspects of the internal control in terms of internal control the reconciliations that have been in place, whether they've been undertaken throughout the year, and also some aspects of budget monitoring, which maybe might need to be reflected upon in terms of, again, whether that should be raised within the annual governance statement, together with actions that the council will be looking to put into place to address those particular points going forward.
Thank you.
Councillor Wiederhorn.
Thank you, Chair. Forgive me, I'm not a financial auditor, but could you explain what a disclaimer opinion is and what the consequences of that opinion are for the council, please?
Sure. Yeah. So a disclaimer opinion is a form of qualified opinion. What it means is that we haven't been able to undertake the work which we would expect to undertake in order to come to either a unqualified opinion or another form of qualified opinion in terms of the potential limitation of scope. The reasons that the auditors across local authorities have recently been issuing a disclaimed opinion related to the implementation of the backstop measures, which MHCLG have introduced, and if work which would normally have been expected to fully be undertaken to come to an opinion on the financial statements can't be completed by that backstop date, then auditors have been issuing a disclaimer opinion. What it means in terms of if a disclaimer opinion is being issued, then in subsequent years there's a period where the following 2 years the FRC has issued some guidance. For the following 2 years there would usually be followed by there would usually be a period of having a disclaimed opinion for 2 years, and there'll be a process of needing to rebuild assurance before you can get to a position where you can once again get to a position where you can once again, all things being equal, get to a reporting position where an unqualified opinion is issued. So it's not a good situation to be in terms of having a disclaimer opinion being issued, but it's a position that is being common across a number of authorities across the country to do with, as I outlined, the reset of the local audit market. There's a lot of information that has been prepared by a number of regulatory bodies in relation to the impact of disclaimed opinion and why the local authority system is in that place. So there's quite a bit of information out there which maybe members may want to receive if you haven't already had it come to this committee in the past.
Any more questions for Sam? No? Okay. Are members content to note the update?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. That is noted. The next item on the agenda is the Internal Audit Activity Progress Report 25 to 26, which informs the committee of the activity progress of the Internal Audit Service in relation to the Internal Audit Plan 2025 to 2026. Could I please remind members that should anyone wish to discuss any aspect of Annex A, we will need to consider resolving to exclude the press and public before doing this, as this contains exempt information. Yes.
Yes, so thank you, Chair, and good evening to you and to the committee. And so I'm Piyush Vatania, Head of Internal Audit, and I'm joined by Spencer, who is our Principal Auditor and the Lead Auditor for Gloucester City Council. So you have our standard Internal Audit Progress Report. It's not been that long since our last meeting, and so you do have a debt recovery audit summary in your pack today, which I'm happy to say we've been able to provide an acceptable level of assurance. The paper's got a little bit skew with, I think, in my agenda pack. So the first item on page 17 should have appeared, I think, a little bit later, which is the recommendation, the progress against the plan. So on page 17, you have the progress report. Then on page 20, Chair, you have the update to the open recommendations, which I'm delighted to say they are decreasing steadily. And on page 21, you have a table which provides information around that. You then have on page 22 the update from the counter fraud team, which is highlights the extent of the work that they are undertaking, including there were 13 new referrals. It also highlights their work around the National Fraud Initiative, which is proving to be very good, as well as the work that they're undertaking on the supported housing improvement programme. You then have more detailed table on page 29 around the open recommendations, and on page 33 you have the exempt recommendations. Would you like me to pause there before we move to the next item?
Councillor Lewis?
Thanks. It's just shocking to me. 2.6 is the accumulated debt of 500,000. Is that any chance of getting that back, or is it just going to have to be written off? And then also in 2.6.2, an officer had a £10 million limit, which seems rather excessive, to be perfectly honest. It's not like having a credit card limit, is it, or something like that? But if you could just explain those to me, if there's anything we can get money back, because 500,000 would be lovely to have that back, wouldn't it? But is that going to have to be written off, I would that's the guess.
Just in terms of the debt, I mean, we collect as much debt as we can. We don't write debt. We absolutely get to a point where we've exhausted every other avenue, and then if we then find that for whatever reason we can collect that, then we would put that back on. So just to reassure you that we don't write debt off unless we absolutely have to.
Do you think it's possibly now that these people, and that's why we can't get them, because it's 6 years, so a lot can happen in 6 years. So
yeah, it can be all sorts of reasons, and it's not just individuals, it could be companies, etc. But yeah, it's there's a myriad of reasons why. But yeah, and the older the debt gets, obviously the more difficult it is to collect it as well.
I think that's just a point around clarification of the roles. That's the point. So it may be that sort of level is needed, but there needs to be control around that in terms of how that is used. And so the processes will be updated to better clarify roles and authorisation limits as well.
Councillor Burkett?
Thank you, Chair. Coming back to that over 500k debt recovery, is there a collection plan set out for that, or are the debts too old or too difficult to recover?
I think the debt is too old. I mean, I think the point we're trying to make here is, yes, it's a lot of money, but it's the period of time that it's accumulated. What we're trying to say here is that where debt is identified, and you can often spend, or sometimes spend, more money chasing a debt than the debt is worth. And so what I think we're trying to say here is that debt needs to be written off more regularly, so that it doesn't accumulate to such large amounts, because then when you come to write off an amount of £500,000, that can have quite an impact on the accounts.
Councillor Pullen, did you have a question?
No.
And also, I'm just reminded by Spencer that the council's policy is that it should be written off after 6 years, so it needs to happen.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at page 31, and the first box talks about procurement. And it seems, just reading that box, it suggests to me that not all authorised officers have undertaken procurement training, mandatory procurement training. Now, that seems worrying. Yeah, I know that the typeset is incredibly small. I had to expand it to read it, but that's what it's suggesting to me, that we've got officers that haven't undertaken mandatory training, and particularly new starters as well. Am I reading that correctly? And in which case there is a problem if we have people who are procuring stuff on a daily basis, they haven't done the training, and the worry is that they're not complying, therefore, with council policy and procedure.
So the training, that there is training that has taken place, but the procurement rules changed in February this year. So there hasn't been any up-to-date training in terms of the new rules with procurement. But we have got a procurement officer now that, yeah, it's been, I mean, we've still got, so we had a procurement officer and we've had one interim, and now we've just got a new interim in. So we have had some problems with resources, and that's why the action is later than it should have been. But we've tasked that person with carrying out some training on the procurement. But that person is the contact for procurement. So if people have got any issues about procurement, then that person would assist them with any procurement that they're doing.
Okay, so there is that one officer in place then, and staff would call her or him up and say, look, this is, but we're still in the situation though where some staff haven't undertaken mandatory training.
On the new procurement rules, yes. Yeah, there is documentation that they can call on and look at. So there is documentation that's been put together, but actual delivery of training hasn't happened.
When are we expecting that to take place in that case?
Because the procurement officer, the new procurement officer, has been in post probably about 6 weeks.
Sorry, just on that, would there be a system in place moving forwards with a timeline of when the staff get the training?
So I guess once the staff had had the training and we've got the documentation in place that they can call on if they've got a procurement to carry out, we would do training. We'd do induction training, but we'd then do training when things change, if there are any changes.
Councillor Booker.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just looking at page 25. It's the counter fraud NFI results there. And by the looks of it, you've rebilled £97,537 from the checks, with 59 civil penalties issued. So what's the forecast for the rest of the year? And how will you target campaigns so that honest taxpayers aren't subsidising people who are trying to cheat the system?
I don't think we have a target. It's reactive. We don't aim to issue a certain number of fines. So we investigate where we find wrongdoing, and the fine is the appropriate sanction. That's when they're issued. So we don't actually have any target. Sorry, there was a second part too.
Yeah, just the forecast for the rest of the year.
Forecasts. Yeah.
Okay.
Any more questions for this part of the board? Pierre, do you want to continue or have you?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the next item, Chair, Internal Audit were asked by the committee to undertake a review of the Hampstead Meadows lease, which we have undertaken, a thorough piece of work. I'm sure members have had the opportunity to read it, and we have split the report into two. There is a public element, which is the majority of our report. However, we have had, due to issues of commercial confidentiality, commercial sensitivity, to remove some of the items into Appendix A, which is the exempt item, which obviously all the members here are able to see. I'm happy to take questions. We would need to go into the non-exempt item if you want to discuss any of those. But suffice to say, it's been a thorough piece of work, and the council has properly and legally awarded the lease for Hampstead Meadows.
Can I just say something? I thought when you paused for questions, though, you said there might have been something else on the last bit of your pause. So my mistake. So we should. It's fine. I just didn't say that. Is that earlier report noted by the committee? Yeah. Okay. So the last report was noted. Thank you. Sorry about that. So open to questions on the Hampstead report. Councillor Lewis.
Thanks, Chair. I think that what comes out of this, we didn't have a process in place, pure and simple. And I think the best was done at the time, not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and which created some ill feeling, should we put it that way? But this has now highlighted an area of work that we need to sort out and get a policy for leasing in place. Am I right in saying it's the first time we've ever done a lease of this magnitude or length? I don't know, because if we have done it before, why didn't it apply this time?
Can I clarify, do you mean internal audit or do you mean the council? So I'll let Andy take that.
It pertains to actually having a long-term lease agreement. This is basically saying we didn't have that policy in place to follow and whatever. I know they've done their best with best practice and all the rest of it, but it is now time we need one for ourselves so that we can make sure this sort of mix-up and whatever, it doesn't happen again.
just to be really clear, I think if you read the report, what it's not saying is that there isn't a policy. What it's saying is that there are a series of policies and procedures that govern the way in which leasing is conducted in the council. What there isn't is one unified leasing policy that pulls it all together. In my experience, that isn't always a given. You don't always have to have that, but it is a recommendation and we'll follow it through. So there's some kind of best practice in place. To answer your first part of your question, Councillor, is we do leases all the time on greater scale, some of them up to 50 years, some of them up to 90 years, depending on the freehold capability. We do leases on a day-to-day basis and they're all negotiated in the same way, under the same code of practice, governed by the RICS. This was no different.
Councillor Readwell.
Thank you, Chair. The report notes that there was significant social media coverage that persisted throughout the heads of terms negotiations. At the same time, my recollection is that some councillors started sharing information via emails, etc. Have you reviewed that at all? Have you reviewed the behaviours of councillors with respect to this lease?
Thank you. No, I was very clear at the commencement of this with the chair and the vice chair when we agreed the terms of reference with the committee, and they were the draft terms of reference were shared with the committee, that we were looking only at the process, not around any of the social media comments or anything else. And I said at the time, and I say now, that if anybody has any queries or issues with regard to, for example, behaviour or comments, they need to bring those up with the monitoring officer, who is the proper person to raise those queries with. We only looked at the process.
Councillor Pullen.
Thank you. Were you surprised when you found out that there wasn't a policy in place?
No, I think to go back, that there are, the council has financial procedure rules. The council also employs a number of professional and expert officers who have undertaken this kind of exercise previously. With regard to this exercise, there was also an external consultancy which provided an independent input into this process, and just the overall, I think, management and member overview of the process meant that the right things were done as far as we are concerned. Okay, this lease has been awarded in a legal and proper manner. What we're saying is there needs to be an overarching, to bring everything together, to pull all of the expertise and knowledge that resides currently in different places, is to pull that together. And that is what we have recommended in our report.
Right, that's slightly different to the way I read things, so I take your point, but there is a line in the report that says, without a process in place, the council and its staff leaves itself open to challenge and reputational damage, and that is concerning.
That would be the risk of not having it all together. So luckily, it's the kind of thing, it's as a risk, it could materialise. On this occasion, it hasn't materialised. I think we're right in saying that.
Yeah, can I quote from the report?
Yeah.
So if I quote from the report, where are we? This lease has been subject to more oversight with both the managing director and cabinet member for policy and resources than would be usual for a lease of this value. I think that is the key sentence within this report, and that's paragraph N.
Because I noticed that on paragraph N, page 8, I think you're looking at. I mean, it talks about local interests and social media, so are we saying then, under normal circumstance, it wouldn't be necessary to bring in senior managers or the managing director in this process? Is that something that's specific to this particular piece of work?
I'll let Andy answer that.
Yeah, so without going into the detail on the financials, the level of financials around this particular lease do not always necessitate having the managing director or indeed the cabinet member for resources looking over something of this value. Generally speaking, that sits within my delegated authority. In other examples, for instance, my delegated authority allows me to do leases of a much higher value than this. The reason it was given that level of scrutiny was because that it was given a wider audience. There was, public interest in this in particular, and it was felt that it was necessary to make sure that we had taken it all the way up so that we had a complete level of scrutiny across the decision. That in itself is over and above what we would normally do for something of this scale.
Any other questions? Councillor Lewis.
And just to come back on it, I mean, I get where you're all coming from, totally, and I think a lot of this was blown up by social media, and it was unfortunate. I can remember poor old Declan getting castigated in full council and all the rest of it, and even his calm demeanour was going a little bit afraid at the one time. And I personally think it was the fact that they didn't understand the process. Now, if we're going to have this process, that will clarify. So I don't think this will happen again. And I think this is where we are at now. They didn't understand the process because the process wasn't really there, the overarching one, which everybody could understand. And it did cause some friction, some unfortunate social media stuff, which I don't think was called for. But I am now happy that this is going to happen. And what Andrew said, it'll go through in the process, and he's got higher discrepancy. It was just badly handled to a certain degree. And I don't think it was the officer's fault, to be perfectly honest. But I would say, let bygones be bygones now. Let's get on with it, get the policy in place so that it will not happen again. And hopefully that will be acceptable to certain people. But that's as good as we're going to get, I think. If it's not there in the domain, well, how can you use it? So anyway, that's my opinion on it.
Spencer, would you like to say something?
Yeah, thank you. So I would definitely disagree with the statement that it's badly handled by officers in the council. I think the way that I would describe this is that the officers of the council took a belt and braces approach to make sure that they did things in the right way. The lack of an overarching policy did not impact how this process worked in the sense of in any negative sense in terms of compliance with legislation. It was done in a legislative compliant manner.
Can I just say thank you for the work that went on to do this? I do realise there's quite a lot of in-depth work. I think it was worth it though, because it gave oversight to what happened and shows that everything was above board and the work that went on. There's just one thing that I'd like to say. There's no target date for the overarching policy, and it might be nice to have one.
Sorry, I think this is a result of the timelines that we were operating under. The target date that I agreed with that, Andrew, is the 1st of April.
Is that all? Any other questions for anyone? No? 1st of April acceptable, I think it is.
You've got to ask the question, haven't you?
Yep. Okay. So, are members happy to note information contained in the Hampstead Meadows lease review and the findings of the audit? Okay. That note is noted. That report is noted. Agenda. I'm just having a look at the agenda. Thank you.
Work schedule.
Work schedule. Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone have any comment about the work schedule for the next meeting? Yeah. I would like to say the constitutional changes that were going to be on this meeting have now been deferred to the next meeting.
Thank you. Do we know what those constitutional changes were as a reminder? Perhaps I shouldn't have asked that. Sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Bullock, could you repeat that, please? Oh, it was to do with e-signing, from e-sealing of reports.
If there's no comment about the work programme, thank you. The date of the next meeting will be Monday, the 9th of February, 2026.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you for coming, and this meeting is now closed.
Yeah.
Thank you.